Hello and welcome to our coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm Ladi Akiridoluale. The headlines. Back from the United States, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says the trip had good results. Russian leader Vladimir Putin says Patriot missile defense systems are old and Russia will always find the antidote. And the Russians are to issue a decree on Russian response to Western oil price caps next week. We'll begin with Ukraine's president, who is back home and where he says he's coming back from the United States with, quote, good results. Volodymyr Zelensky told the U.S. that Ukraine is an investment, not a charity, and invoked an old anachronism with the Nazis in a key world press conference for continued assistance.
When we say patriots in Ukraine and in the US, we mean the protection of states and the people. This issue is solved for Ukraine. There's also financial support. There are also other agreements. We will speak about them later. The victory will be ours. Glory to every warrior of ours. Glory to everyone who protects our country. We bring to Ukraine, to Donbass, to Bakhmut, and to the south. Decisions which our defense forces are waiting.
All right, I was asking about our programs there, but let's go on with the news here. The Ukrainian servicemen in the Donetsk region frontline have welcomed news of more heavy equipment hours after the United States announced a new $1.85 billion military aid package. The package was announced after President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the U.S. Congress in his first foreign wartime visit. Mr. Zelensky earlier had met with President Joe Biden, who urged support to keep flowing in 2023 when congressional approval from Ukrainian aid would be harder. The United States has sent about $50 billion in assistance to Kiev as Europe's biggest land conflict since 1945 drags on, killing tens of thousands and driving millions from their homes and reducing cities to ruins. Meanwhile, Kiev residents praised the Ukrainian president for his speech delivered earlier in the United States, calling it very inspiring and powerful. Mr. Zelensky's speech was aimed at softening the concerns of Republicans when they take over the House of Representatives and keeping U.S. public opinion on his side with reminders of the hardships his people face. Kiev residents expressed hope that the Patriot missile system will help to better protect energy infrastructure targeted by Russian missile and drone attacks. The Patriot missile is deemed to be one of the most advanced U.S. air defense systems, offering protection against attacking aircraft as well as cruise and ballistic missiles. On the other hand, the United States has trained approximately 3,100 Ukrainian troops to date on different systems, with training on the newly announced Patriot missile systems set to begin very soon, and that's according to a senior defense official. Nearly half of those troops have been trained on M777 howitzers or HIMARS rocket launchers, two of the systems that have been critical to Ukrainian operations so far. Ukrainian forces have also been trained on vehicles, various forms of artillery, drones, and other systems. The Pentagon will soon begin training Ukrainian personnel on how to operate and maintain the Patriot missile system, officially announced yesterday during President Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to Washington. Though the Pentagon would not specify exactly when the training would begin or how long it would take for Ukrainians to master the complex system, a senior defense official said it would start very soon and would take several months. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met Polish President Andrzej Duda in Poland's Warsaw after his return from Washington. Video released by Mr. Duda's office shows the two embracing and holding a meeting. Mr. Duda's aide said the meeting lasted nearly 2 hours and touched on Mr. Zelensky's U.S. visit, as well as Polish and Ukrainian relations. Poland, which shares a roughly 500-kilometer border with Ukraine, has registered more than 1.5 million refugees from its eastern neighbor since the war began, the most of any European nation. Now let's head to Russia. As expected, reactions came in from Russian President Vladimir Putin, who said the Patriot air defense system that the United States is supplying to Ukraine was an old weapon system that Russia would be able to counter. Mr. Putin told reporters that the Patriot system was quite old and did not work like Russia's S-300 system. He adds that Russia wants an end to the war in Ukraine and all armed conflicts end with diplomatic negotiations.
So those were Ну, а что касается патриотов, это достаточно старые системы.
In regards to Patriots, it's a rather old system, and it doesn't work as well as Russia's S-300 system. Nonetheless, those who oppose us proceed from the fact that this is a defensive weapon. Okay, we will take this into account, and an antidote will always be found. So those who are doing this in vain because it's just a pulling of the conflict, that's all. Our goal is not to spin the flywheel of military conflict, but on the contrary, to end this war. We are striving for this and will continue to strive.
Мы к этому стремимся и будем стремиться. Конечно, должны решить главный вопрос. Нам нужно повышать уровень реальной заработной платы граждан.
Meanwhile, Mr. Putin says he intends to sign a decree on Russia's response to a Western oil price cap next Monday or Tuesday. He provided no details on the upcoming document, which the Kremlin has said will set out Russia's response to the $60 per barrel price cap imposed by the Group of Seven, European Union and Australia on December the 5th. Russia was not aware of the results of investigations into the pipeline blasts on Nord Stream by Sweden and Denmark, according to Moscow, without providing evidence, which has blamed the explosions on Western sabotage. Mr. Putin called the explosion state terrorism and said it was beneficial to those who are interested in gas supplies via Ukraine.
I think I will sign on Monday, Tuesday. These are precautionary measures because we do not see any individual damage for Russia, for the Russian economy, for Russian fuel and energy complex. We sell approximately at the prices that are set as a ceiling. Nord Stream is a terrorist attack. It's obvious. Everyone recognized it. But surprisingly, this is an act of international, I would say, state terrorism. Why? Because individuals on their own, without the structure, without the support of state structures, cannot commit such attacks. It is clear that this was done with the support of the state. And as they usually say in such cases, look who is interested. Who is interested in the line of Russian gas supply to the European market passing only via Ukraine? Who is interested in Ukraine receiving money? Here is the aggressor, Russia, but they receive money from us.
Let's talk now to Kira Rudik, a member of parliament in Ukraine and leader of the Golos Party. She joins us on the program virtually. Good morning to you, Kira. Thank you for your time. Of course, Kira is in Kiev, the capital of Ukraine.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
The visit of President Zelensky to the United States has been the dominant piece of news over the last 24 to 48 hours. First, in the run-up to the actual visit, and then the visit itself and the immediate aftermath of the visit. How is the visit being received back in Ukraine by the political elite? We are hearing, of course, that the citizens have their own reactions, but how are the political elite receiving the visit? It was a big risk that he took.
Well, we, of course, think that the visit was an extremely positive step, and on so many levels. First of all, in bringing attention back to Ukraine closer to the winter holidays. Second, on securing the support from our allies, United States. Third, in the results of the visit, because we are finally getting the Patriot missile systems that are not only important as the fact that we will be getting the systems and will be able to protect our homes and increase our defense capability, but also as a symbol, as a sign to our European allies that Ukraine can get the sophisticated weapons. Remember, at the very beginning of the full-scale invasion, it was unspeakable that we will receive weapons like this. And right now it is happening. So it is an incredibly important step, also showing a huge progress in diplomacy that has been made. Of course, there were risks when President left the country. However, we know that every day we all take risks. That right now the situation is getting more and more critical, and we need to have a turning point in this war. So this is why he first visited the front line. He shook hands of our soldiers. He took the flag. You are showing right now the flag that President brought from the front line right to the Congress, being the second wartime president in the history of United States who was speaking to the Congress and meeting with the president and addressing on behalf of the country that is at war. So that was huge on so many levels, emotional for people in Ukraine, but also giving the hope for our nation that next year in 2023 we will get to the end of this war with our victory.
But then those that Ukraine is fighting against or defending its country against, the Russians have naturally reacted. First, of course, they're not happy with the fact that Ukraine is getting that Patriot defense system. And now they're saying that, well, they have the antidote. They'll find the antidote to the Patriot defense system, and that there will be, quote and unquote, severe consequences for this acquisition. Yet you talk about the fact that, you know, there's confidence now that there will be some level of victory or victory following this conflict. How do we marry both? Because the Russians are not backing down. They're not talking peace anymore. They're also talking tough.
Well, when Russia says, oh, there would be severe consequences, I have a good question of, like, what else are they going to figure out? Look, I'm in Kiev. Almost every single morning, we wake up of the air raid sirens when there are massive missile attacks on our cities, destroying our infrastructure, killing people. So what else can they figure out? Send more missiles our way? Well, this is why we need the Patriots, to defend ourselves. We did not attack anybody. We were the peaceful, sovereign country. And this is our aim, to remain peaceful, sovereign country with our territories, that we will continue living in peace. However, Russia, we also know that Russia did not ever go with the word that they would give. So there is no precedent in the history that would claim or support the case that if you have an agreement with Russia, that they would go along with it. We know that they will break their word, and that the only language that they understand is the language of power. They are like a bully that you should stand up to. And this is what Ukraine is doing, and Ukrainian people are doing, standing up to the bully that came here to rape, kill, destroy, murder, torture. We are a peaceful country that is defending ourselves. We are fighting for our lives, for an ability to have tomorrow, for an ability to have another day. And this is why we are getting so much support from the rest of the world, saying, okay, we understand that if Russia wins this war, it will create a critical precedent for the other tyrants that always want to conquer their neighbors. And this is not going to happen. So I think the alliance to push Russia back will only become stronger, and more countries from different parts of the world will join us, especially because we still remain an important agricultural country that wants to feed the world, that wants to continue producing agricultural products, food for the rest of the world. And right now, almost 30% of our land is being mined. So you can imagine that the next year and the year after, we will not be able to provide the amount of grains, wheat, and sunflower oil that we used to. That will drive the prices high, and that will create a huge impact on all countries, including African countries. And this is why we want to win this war as soon as possible, because we want to go back to be technological, agricultural country, move forward with our lives without having a neighbor that always wants to destroy us.
Given that scenario, of course, while we wait to see what happens in the new year, currently, as you referenced in your answer to the last question, you wake up every morning, more or less, as you said, in Kiev to air raid sirens. I can imagine that the situation, given the weather, is quite dire and quite a significant amount of damage has been done to energy infrastructure, so heating and gas and of course water and all of that has been affected. What is it like? You're a member of parliament, so you have constituents. What can you tell us about how they're coping with this just a couple of hours to Christmas?
It is incredibly hard. So we are not set to live without the electricity, without heat, and without running water, especially in the temperatures like this. Like yesterday, it was -8 in Kiev, and it was hard. People are trying to survive using diesel generators, using like really many layers of warm clothes, and saving the water for being heated, so you can cover your basic needs. However, it is hard, extremely, especially on elderly and families with little children. So you can imagine when even making a warm cup of tea becomes a huge challenge, and you have to do so many things every day. So we are setting up special shelters for people to come and charge their phones, warm their food, and get more warm clothes. We are getting humanitarian support to get through the winter. However, it is not a sustainable solution, and we understand that the first step would be to stop the destruction of the infrastructure, to stabilize the situation, so then we can renew the energy supply to people's homes. Yesterday, I had an electricity in my home for 2 hours just. And right now I'm running on a diesel generator, so I can charge my laptop and being able to talk to you. So yes, it is very hard. But also we know that the alternative to that is bowing to Russia, and this is not what we are going to do. We know that Putin wants to break us this way. He wants us to be annoyed, and he wants us to drop our morale and stop supporting our troops. This is not going to happen, because the alternative for us is being killed, tortured, same as happened to people in the temporary occupied territories. We have seen it very well. So this is why for us the alternatives are the death or occupation, or some discomfort that we are feeling, and we are choosing discomfort. We will go through it through the challenge, not a tragedy. We will survive through this winter, and we will win the war, because this is our land and we are protecting it.
Before I let you go, Kira, I must ask about the migrants, the immigration issues that have surrounded this conflict, because more often than not, a lot of attention isn't really focused on that. First of all, there are two groups. There are people who left Ukraine, who have gone to places like Poland and even further beyond, as far as the UK and other places that have offered them sanctuary. And then there are those who are internally displaced within Ukraine, who have had to leave, as you call it, the temporarily occupied territories, and move to areas which are under Ukrainian government control. How is that being coped with? Because these are people who number quite a lot. Some of the estimates I've read would say between 3, some 4, 5, even 6 million have been internally displaced. They've had to leave their natural habitats and move to other places. How are the authorities coping with that?
So the total amount of people who had to move inside Ukraine and outside Ukraine is calculated to be 10 million. So this is the largest migration in Europe since the Second World War. And this is, of course, terrifying. So in terms of the internal displaced people, the government is trying to provide the shelters and use the areas where there were hotels and additional places to live to cover for that. But it is extremely hard given the amount of people. So people are figuring it out themselves. There are also some programs being built for the people to have new homes. In the countries like Poland, Slovakia, Czechia, United Kingdom that are opening their doors, there were temporary programs when people would greet Ukrainian families in their homes for some time, and then people would have to find their homes. These programs are almost over right now, so people have to make decision either to stay in the country that welcome them or to return back to Ukraine. But right now we see that the situation in Ukraine is so complicated that people will probably remain at the countries where they are right now and push this decision towards the spring. It is very hard everywhere. So right now I'm in Kyiv, but on the western part of Ukraine that is safer and that is farther from Russia, it is also hard with running water, with heat, with electricity. So it is not that there is a really ideal place in Ukraine right now. This is why people have to manage, but most of all, it calls for people helping each other and increasing the circles of the responsibility. So right now you not only have to take care of yourself, your family and your loved ones, but also of the neighbors that may need help, of course of your constituency, but also of Ukrainians that do really require your help every single day. And this is what happens for every single person here. We say, okay, what can I do to make sure that my nation, my people survive this? And this is what we do. We survive.
Indeed. It's on that note that I want to thank you, Kira Rudik, for your time on the program and to wish you, in spite of the dire situation there, compliments of the season. Do have yourself a good holiday, even though the circumstances, as you've enumerated, are quite dire. We hang on to hope. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy holidays.
And after the break, United States issues new sanctions on 10 Russian naval entities. Details after the break. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Thanks for staying tuned. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has called Israeli Prime Minister-designate Benjamin Netanyahu to congratulate him on the formation of a new government and to discuss the situations in Ukraine and Iran. According to a statement from Mr. Netanyahu's office, the two leaders discussed a number of issues, chief among them the war in Ukraine. Prime Minister-designate Netanyahu told President Putin that he hopes a way will be found as soon as possible to end the war and the suffering caused by it, adding that he is determined to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons and to curb its attempts to establish a military base on its northern border. Mr. Netanyahu had officially informed Israeli President Isaac Herzog that he had successfully formed a government. And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. President Joe Biden's administration has rolled out new sanctions on 10 Russian naval entities after Russian operations against Ukrainian ports. Mr. Blinken said, quote, "We are committed to imposing additional severe consequences on President Putin and his enablers for Russia's unconscionable war against Ukraine in the wake of Russian naval operations against Ukrainian ports, including those that are providing much-needed food and grain to the world. The U.S. today is imposing sanctions on Russian naval entities. The entities sanctioned include companies that produce different aspects of Russia's naval capabilities. The U.S. State Department said one of the sanctioned companies is a battery company, Regal, that has been a supplier to the Russian Navy for more than 15 years. Also sanctioned was a Central Institute for Scientific Research, Elektropriba, which produces a navigation system for Russian combat ships. And German authorities have arrested an employee of its BND Foreign Intelligence Agency on suspicion of passing state secrets to Russia. The accused, named as Carsten because of privacy rules, was arrested in Berlin in a case of possible treason. Authorities searched his flat and workplace as well as the home of another person. Foreign Intelligence Chief Bruno Karl said releasing more details about the case could be of use to Moscow. Carsten Earl was remanded in custody yesterday, day after his arrest in the German capital. Officers were also searched at the former BND headquarters at Pierlach near Munich. He is suspected of sharing information with Russia this year, which he obtained during the course of his professional activities. Federal prosecutors did not elaborate on whether that was before or after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The United States Senate has passed a massive $1.7 trillion government spending bill that will fund critical government operations across federal agencies and provide emergency aid for Ukraine and natural disaster relief. The House must next pass the measure as lawmakers race the clock to avert a shutdown at the end of this week. The expectation on Capitol Hill is that a shutdown will be avoided, but congressional leaders have little room for error, with government funding set to expire at the end of today. Once the House passes the bill, it will be sent to President Joe Biden to be signed into law. The final vote tally in the Senate was 68-29. In order to give enough time for the year-long bill to be formally processed and sent to Mr. Biden sometime next week, the Senate cleared a bill by voice vote to extend the government funding deadline by 1 week to December 30. The House is expected to approve the 1-week extension today before it votes on the year-long spending bill. Let's talk now to Mr. Oladende Ario, security expert who joins us right here in our Lagos studios. Good morning to you. Compliments of the season.
Good morning, same to you.
I don't know how much of a compliment it is, but we're not particularly at the front line. But I must ask you about the way I asked everybody else over the last 2 days. What do you make of Mr. Zelensky's trip to the United States?
Wow, thank you very much. If you had not asked me, I would have used that to answer one of your questions. Now, it was a glorious appearance for Zelensky at the Senate. He had 32 minutes, and that's uncommon, to address joint U.S. session. And he gave a good account of himself. He gave them assurances that the money they are giving them is not going to be wasted, and it's not charity, that they will justifiably spend the money. And he assured them that Ukraine is not going to bend or beg, that they will go all out. It gives a lot of hope, because from day one, most of us who are Ukrainians, let me put it that way now, yeah, man, I'm one. Okay. We were like, oh, Ukraine against the almighty Russia. But today makes it 303 days. And they've been able to hold their own, especially when Ukraine is the amphitheater of the war. Nothing is happening in Russia. All the missiles, all the bombs, everything is happening right there. There have been loss of human lives. There have been facilities destroyed, especially the area of energy and power. But they, according to Zelensky, they still have their lives. And he said they will have Christmas carol. I mean, he gave so much hope. And I can assure you, the troops who are fighting, when they get to listen to what this man said, the morale will be very high. And for me, that's a critical moment. You know, when you look at the entire crisis, okay, and the invasion. So good enough that he left America with so much assurance, with so much promise of support, which will of course keep them going until something happens.
I'm happy you mentioned, of course, there's a time mark in all of this. His visit, and as we're going on with our discussion today, tomorrow will make it exactly 10 months since all of this started. 4 days. And when this invasion started in February, very few people would have said, "Oh, by December you will still be talking about." It
was 2 days after my 62nd birthday.
So, and now 10 months, 62 years, and 10 months later,
you can imagine. Imagine if I've been at war with you in the last 10 months.
That is something. But broadly speaking, Now, I know, I mean, you have buyers and you're very concerned about humanitarianism. And so, therefore, anytime when we talk about this, one of the things
my concern
that people always tend to neglect or not talk about as much as they talk about other things is what is happening on the ground to the people who are purely civilians, who have no choice. They're running from pillar to post, searching for safety. And I asked Kira Rudik, who was my guest before you, about that. And she said, look, the total number of people who have been displaced is 10 million. Within Ukraine, there's a larger number than those who have left the country.
Yes.
So many of them, some are stuck in areas occupied by Russia, others are moving to areas occupied by Ukraine. Given, I mean, even with the background of what Mr. Zelensky said, most of the aid that he is going to receive from America and a number of the other places is in military form.
Not necessarily.
Well, some of it will be humanitarian.
There may be food, there may be utilities as well, you know, and consumables. I mean, it's not all about fighting now. Survival of the people is also important. It's a good thing that Poland is doing a fantastic job. They keep taking in more Ukrainians, okay? And then that's been a very safe haven for them. But for those Ukrainians who are still at home, they are, you know, my concern, because 10 million is a speculative figure, as they do when these things happen. It may be more. I don't think it will be less. I mean, especially when you know that the majority of those who left were non-Ukrainians, like Nigerians who are studying there. The real natives, they are on ground, and the whole of them are fighting to keep their fatherland in place. So it's important that the world should be concerned about them. Remember, I told you the last time that when they say a building has been brought down, especially in civilian areas, human beings will have been brought down along with the building. But who goes there to go and count the people in the rubbles? It's very difficult. So in all of these things, they just speculate. That's why I'm so concerned. Unfortunately, Putin is playing the ghost by now saying that America is fighting a proxy war, and that the way they are going, they don't seem to be looking at peace. But everybody who has been monitoring this will tell you that it's a hypocrite as far as peace is concerned. Every opportunity that he had to have thrown in the idea of peace at the UNGA, at the UN Security Council meeting, at another meeting they had in Thailand, he avoided it. And his so-called allies, China, India, they too, they've been playing the wall, you know, impenetrable. Whereas, just for the sake of humanity, we will have felt, oh, let's end this thing. The year is ending. Some of us thought, in the spirit of the ending year and the Yuletide, there might be a change of heart. But from what I'm seeing now, I'm afraid, not with the increased arms being given to Wagner by North Korea, you know, the contracting company. So it's not looking good at all. But
and we have been asked to prepare for, I mean, we're seeing visuals of people having to flee. And one of the statements that came out of Russia, of course, in the aftermath or in the run-up to Mr. Zelensky's U.S. visit is that, okay, so now we are going to prepare for a very long
haul. Yeah. So I remember Berlusconi, the former Italian PM, he made a statement some months back that the mission was to simply take Zelensky out, because he's pro-America, pro-West. Right. And then plant, that, I'm using a specific word now, plant a pro-Moscow, pro-East government, you know, in place. And that they didn't send Putin, I don't know who are the other members of the gang now, to go and be bombing different parts of Ukraine. That attention was simply going to be on Kiev. And that within 2 weeks, the party will have been over. And we are here 10 months down the line. And it's not looking like it's going to end anytime. Nobody can project. I've been monitoring this on an hourly basis. You know, it forms an integral part of my study on global peace and security. Right. And so I may not be able to say I'm an authority, but I know so much about it. And when you look at all the funds as available on regular basis, you cannot say it may likely end. You can't project. You cannot project. There are too many moving parts.
Exactly. There are too many things happening side by side.
There was a young man that was arrested in Russia they said he made a comment that Russian armed soldiers were raping Ukrainian women and killing people in civilian local areas, and he was arrested. Fine, it's a spin-off from the entire thing, but there are many more that don't get reported.
Yeah, probably. I mean, in far-flung places, in places where
communication and attention may not be available.
Indeed. Let's look at where we are today now. Mr. Zelensky has gone to the US, come back with what he has gotten. The Russians.
I call it mouth-watering deals. Yeah, man. If I have such a deal behind me, I will shake the world.
Thank goodness you did. I guess the other side of this, of course, more seriously, is to look at going forward. I mean, Christmas is 2 days away.
They don't know it's Christmas.
Well, they said, I mean, they planted the tree.
I mean, Putin and his people, they don't know it's Christmas.
Well, I'm sure the Russians will celebrate Christmas as well. Against the new year now, and you've talked quite clearly that nobody can project. But what do you think we will see?
Now, if the US is able to supply a lot of the Patriots to Ukraine, what that means is their defense level will have been raised. And that means it will take Russia a new innovation to sustain the attack at the level that we've seen it in recent times. Maybe, plus the sanctions against their naval authority and all of that. And of course, North Korea has been dragged into it. It's not impossible that sanity may occur and they say, look, let's call this a day. It's a pity that Putin said it, but I know he didn't mean it. If he meant it, all it takes is a phone call to Zelensky. All it will take is a phone call or to any of the allied nations and say, please, arrange a meeting, let's talk. I mean, we can't continue this way. This is not about Ukraine now. It's about humanity, because tomorrow, a country headed by Ladi can come after one, a smaller one now, headed by me, and the world will be looking the way they are looking, as if nothing is happening. Which again, let me say it again, that in years to come, there'll be a revision for membership of the UN. Nations will ask themselves, Ukraine was a very solid member of UN. They had this challenge. What did they do? Whatever underground work they are doing is not manifesting, it's not reflecting, and lives are being lost. An economy, a thriving economy, is being gradually destroyed. And it will take a long time to rebuild all of these things, which of course, I mean, we will look back and say, why did they do it? Is it for territorial expansion? Or they want to eliminate, or they want to wipe off Ukraine from the face of the earth, from the earth? Looking at the massive bombing that they were made to go through. The other day, they had 96 missiles were landed within the Donetsk region alone. I mean, you can begin to picture what losses will have resulted from that. So it's about time that the world will get its game together. If it means through an appeal to Putin, let him see sense that what he's doing doesn't make sense.
Well, in the spirit of goodwill, which is the spirit that Christmas is supposed to engender, let's hope that all parties come to the table as quickly as possible. And
I get my Christmas card from you.
Okay. Since we're on there, I say yes.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Thank you for your time. Compliments of the season. I do enjoy
see you next year.
See you next year. Thank you. And when we return, scientists say 65% of Antarctica's plants and animals could disappear. Penguins are most at risk. Please stay on with us. Thanks for staying tuned. Welcome back. Ladi Williams joins me on this Friday, the last working day of the Christmas week.
Few days to our chicken and turkey and all of that.
Depending on which one you're going after. Russia is likely to buy yuan on the FX market in 2023.
Yeah.
Well, this was expected. I mean, it's a natural progression from what they've been doing this year.
Exactly. And looking at the Moscow exchange, I checked the trading pairs, from February when they invaded Ukraine, and I saw that all dollar pairs, had that downward
trajectory.
And we saw that, across board, for all USD trading pairs. But if you flip over to check the yuan there, you see there was a rise, and it's been called the great de-dollarization, of the Russian economy, and they have pushed that agenda, and they're even looking to push it even more in 2023. They're looking now to buy more yuan, on the exchange, and improve more friendly currencies, get them more pairs, more trading pairs on the exchange. And they've tagged the yuan the most friendly,
friendliest.
With the word friendliest currency, on the exchange. So we've seen that trend, continue, and it's expected to continue, into 2023. And all of that also depends on how much, revenue they get from their, oil and gas exports. That's talking about Russia, because there are expectations that revenue is going to drop, with all these
price caps, sanctions and all of that.
Exactly. So it all depends on what happens, with revenue in 2023. But the expectation is revenue is going to drop.
Now we have the greenback on our screen, so let's talk about the greenback itself.
Exactly.
The dollar is steadying.
Yes.
In the view of the Fed.
Yes.
And economic resilience is expected. So that steadying is expected to carry on into the new year for the dollar.
For the dollar. The dollar is looking, strong again, even though it was at the strongest point, earlier this year. And for investors now, it's all about, has the dollar peaked? Is it time? Because we've seen that downward trend, for the DXY. It last traded at the top at 114 points.
Right.
Against a basket of other currencies. But we've seen that drop to about 104. So that's like a massive, drop. We saw that happen because the Fed, got aggressive. We saw the rate hikes, 75 basis points back and forth. And we saw the dollar strengthen. Everyone, ran into cash. And, what's the top cash to run to? Obviously, the dollar. So we've seen that, help the dollar. But now we're seeing that downtrend. Even though it seems like investors are trying to move more into risk assets, rebalance portfolios and all of that, we're still seeing risk assets, get, hammered. We've not seen any Santa rally, and it doesn't look like we're going to see, anyone going forward. So, the projections, the rate projections, rate outlook for 2023 is starting to give the dollar, some more strength, going in, even though it's low right now. But obviously, we've seen those forex traders, make a killing, this year.
This year, they have made a killing.
Exactly.
Now, the oil is rising just as the year is ending.
Yeah.
On the basis of some supply concerns.
Exactly.
Concerning Russia.
Yeah, the same old movements we've seen in the oil market. We've seen supply, issues push the oil prices up, earlier this year. But we've seen most of the assets that, shined earlier this year, talking about the US dollar, oil, commodities like wheat. We've seen them reach a peak.
And then taper down.
They've started tapering down. But now there is this fear that, going into 2023, we might see them start to pick up again because the issues are still there. Inflation and the rate hike outlook is still, very much with us going into 2023. So we're seeing oil prices, tend up today. And it's all about Russia at the end of the day. Investors are looking out for, supply disruptions coming from, Russia. So that's helping to, keep the prices up. But, we still have it below $100, which is good.
Which was good for those who are buying.
Exactly. Because we've seen, some sky-high inflation rates actually taper this in November, talking about the U.S. We've seen some deceleration. So it's good for these prices to actually, come down.
Indeed. Laddie, it's been a roller coaster.
Oh, yes.
The weekend and Christmas beckons.
Yeah.
Compliments of the season.
Compliments of the season.
You've been a good investor this year. I hope you reap the rewards. And the turkey is sure.
Oh, yes. Let's hope for a big turkey.
Yes, indeed. So, of course, Laddie will have more along with the team as to whether you should go for the turkey or the chicken, this Christmas.
Yeah.
But for now, thanks, Laddie.
Thank you.
Let's take a quick look at some of the sports. Boxing has been threatened by the International Olympic Committee with expulsion from the Paris 2024 Olympic Games in what represents a major escalation of its increasingly bitter row with the International Boxing Association and its Russian president, Umar Kremlev. They have been pushed to breaking point by the announcement earlier this month that the International Boxing Association had renewed a multi-million-dollar contract with Russia's state energy supplier Gazprom, and a threat from Kremlev that they would not give permission for its fighters and officials to take part in events that they were not involved in. That was followed by the decision to lift a ban on boxers from Russia and Belarus competing under their own flags in direct contravention of an IOC ruling. And the Ukrainian football club Shakhtar Donetsk is to have its case heard today against FIFA at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, bidding to overturn the decision to suspend player and coaching contracts in the country following the invasion by Russia. Shakhtar Donetsk's main appeal is over the legality of the ruling, which it says led to the loss of almost $43 million for player transfer income and depletion of club revenues. The Bureau of the FIFA Council decided in March to suspend contracts in Ukraine and Russia for foreign staff and extended this until the end of June of 2023. The club called FIFA's rules inappropriate and overreaching. And finally, on the program, it was only a matter of time before human-caused climate change and pollution reached even the most isolated continent on the planet. As global temperatures rise, Antarctica's pristine landscape is already changing, and new research shows most of the region's plant and animal species, including its iconic penguins, are in trouble. The study published in the journal PLOS Biology found that 65% of Antarctica's native species, emperor penguins top among them, will likely disappear by the end of the century if the world continues its business as usual ways and fails to rein in planet-warming fossil fuel emissions. The study also showed that the current conservation efforts in Antarctica are not working on the rapidly changing continent. Researchers concluded implementing an extra layer of cost-effective strategies, which they lay out in the study, could save up to 84% of Antarctica's vulnerable biodiversity. Antarctica's geographical isolation has long protected the continent from the worsening impacts of the climate crisis and other environmental disasters that plague the rest of the world, such as wildfires, flooding, and drought. Thanks for being with us. That's our program today and for the week. Do have yourselves a pleasant Christmas weekend coming up. My name is Laddie Akiri Doluale. Good morning.